The Desmond was built in 1892 in Port Huron, Michigan by the Jenks Shipbuilding Company. She had a length of 149 feet, a width of 30 feet, a depth of 9 feet, and she had a gross tonnage of 456 tons. With this, she could also carry a net tonnage of 355 tons, and her hull was made of wood. In 1909, the Desmond was converted to a sandsucker. This changed her dimensions again. The sandsucker ships were owned and operated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and used for keeping harbors and navigable rivers open for passing ships. Private companies would then make a profit and business out of the extracted sand from the bottom of harbors and ship canals. They would then sell it. The Desmond did this for over 8 years. When the Desmond was converted to a sandsucker, she was owned by the Cream City Sand Company of Milwaukee. The Desmond had a very active and successful career. She would travel from harbor to harbor along the Lake Michigan coastline. On December 8, 1917, the Desmond would meet her end. Late in the season for shipping, the Desmond was on her final trip of the year. She was under the command of Captain Emil Thoresen, or Emil Thoresen. The Desmond departed St. Joseph in a very wintry afternoon and headed northwest to Racine with her usual load of sand. The wintry winds began to grow and blew the Desmond off her planned course. As the Desmond was continued to be blown off course, this pushed her further out into high seas and sub-zero temperatures. Captain Thoresen, a well-seasoned and veteran sailor, began to understand the danger that was about to befold for the Desmond. He made the choice to head for the safety of Chicago Harbor. All the crew members aboard the Desmond began to fear that this may be their last trip, not for the year, however, perhaps the last of their lives. A surviving crew member later described how other crew members tried to persuade the captain to run the ship aground on a beach. The captain, however, refused. He said that he had been sailing for over 30 years and never once lost a ship. He made the statement that if he was going to lose the Desmond, he would go down with her. As the storm grew in intensity, the waves began to smash even harder against the Desmond. This caused the cargo of sand to begin to shift aboard her. The Desmond then began to list to starboard. The crew members began frantically shoveling the cargo of sand to try and level its cargo and get the ship back on an even keel. They had a brief moment of hope when they saw the lights of Chicago Harbor. With certainty on their minds and being so close, they thought they would make it and be rescued. At around 2 a.m., the Desmond sprung a leak in her stern. At this point, the engines had to be shut down to continue to operate the steam pumps. The Desmond's crew continued working all that long, terrifying night to try and keep their ship from sinking. However, at the same time, they also tried to get anyone else's attention that may be out on the lake. As the water began to grow and gain on them, one of the coal bunkers collapsed. Pieces of coal then clogged the pumps and siphons. Captain Thoresen then decided his only chance to save his ship was to launch a lifeboat and row for help. He desperately needed a tug to haul them in. However, there would be none to be found. The captain and 4 crewmen boarded the lifeboat and headed in the direction of Chicago. The captain and his men had just barely gotten the lifeboat moving when the Desmond tipped on her side. Its stack hit and capsized the lifeboat, throwing all of the men into the icy waters. Meanwhile, the crewmen that were still aboard on the Desmond began to scramble up top as their vessel tipped over. These crew members then threw ropes to the 5 others that they spotted out in the lake and tried to rescue them. Captain Thorson and Frank Kipper managed to grab the ropes and were pulled alongside the ship. However, Captain Thorson died and froze to death as he laid there. Kipper survived, along with the other 8 still on board. As the Desmond floated for several hours, buying some critical time for the rest of the crew members, the surviving men were rescued eventually by the tug William A. Field. And then finally, the Desmond sank at 7 a.m. However, not without taking 7 men down with her in the disaster, or succumbing to the elements out on the lake. In the aftermath of the sinking of the Desmond, 7 men unfortunately lost their lives. However, thankfully, 6 others were rescued by more tugs, again the William A. Field, the Gary, and the North Harbor. And that is the full story of the Desmond sinking within sight of the South Chicago, Illinois lighthouse. What a terrible and tragic loss. It's unclear. I can't find any sources or websites or anything whether or not the Desmond has been found. Now, I could be completely and totally wrong on that. She may have been found, but I just can't find any records whether or not her wreck has been found. But I would very much love to know if it has. And, man, all these late shipping season runs trying to squeeze in last minute like this, and what are the results? All these poor men put out to sea like that, and they encounter a terrible fierce gale in the wintry season. I can't say I've ever heard a story of the men getting out on their lifeboat, and then as the ship capsizes, the stack just smashes it like that and sends the men flying. My goodness, what a wild event to take place. My heart goes out to those men. I know that water was frigid freezing, and but thank goodness at least some of the men were able to be rescued and survive. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. If there's anything I missed or any other intriguing information that you may find on the Desmond, please let me know. And I do appreciate your comments and your support and your help in building this channel. We're almost up to 1,600. I cannot believe it, guys. Thank you. We are almost up to 1,600 on this channel for subscribers. And that tells me there's a big hunger for the Great Lakes and the shipwreck maritime history on them. So thank you guys again so very much for your support, and do look forward again for the next episode. And until next time, God bless you all.